yes, we're selling floor covering and floor covering materials to flooring retailers around Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. But it's not the what that we're selling, it's the how and the why. And ultimately, doing business the right way doesn't matter the product as long as the process is right. Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Train, executive coach, leadership and culture consultant, and I'm joined by my good friend, Jim Bob Howard, veteran technical consultant. Together, we have more than 60 years combined of business and organizational experience. The purpose of this podcast is to have short but meaningful discussions about the people and culture side of business and how owners and executives can be both kind and successful. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Nice Business Podcast. I'm Richard Train, your host, and my co-host is my longtime friend, Jim Bob Howard, and we are thrilled to welcome Jim Furbish to join us in a conversation. And Jim, before I let you kind of talk about yourself, I just want to set up a couple of things here. We spoke a little while ago, and you've done a lot of things. And it really comes down to what I got most out of our conversation has to do with reputation. How will you best be remembered? And of course, we're talking about this from a professional standpoint. I think that's something that's worth exploring for how do you lead, whether you are a business owner or whether you're leading in place as a manager at some level. It really kind of doesn't matter on the industry. But before we really delve into that topic, why don't we talk a little bit about you and who you are?
Oh, my favorite subject. I've done, as you said, I've done a lot of things. I said I've kind of had a life full of Forrest Gump type experiences where I come in off out of a storm on the lake here locally and find myself sitting in the front of Al Gore's houseboat, having beers and eating potato chips. But I can't even think of his first name. Carter from Backstreet Boys shows up with a friend and asks if he can surf behind our boat. I had no idea who the guy was. I've had quite a few experiences, worked for some very well-known, highly reputed companies, a couple that were very highly reputed, but maybe didn't quite live up to their reputation.
Right.
I love to tell people I worked for the second biggest wine company in the world, a huge pharmaceutical distributor, and then went to work for Polo Ralph Lauren in their tailored clothing. And without embarrassment, I went from wine to drugs to expensive clothes. but throughout all that, integrity, doing things the right way has always been important to me.
Yeah.
I've had some different experiences being elected to boards, presidents of organizations, charter member, first president of the, now talk about exciting groups, luggage, leather goods, and travel accessories credit managers group.
Wow.
There have been a lot of fun things. And in mid-career, and this is where I crossed paths with Jim Bob, I decided I was going kind of in the wrong direction despite the business successes I was having. So I kind of bailed out, went to work for a nonprofit business association that at their core is integrity, ethics, and trust. Worked there for 15 years until retirement.
Yeah.
Working my way up from, they had to kind of create a position for me, but basically sales, ground level sales through branch manager, sales manager, then ultimately vice president here locally.
And I'd love to hear about that transition, like going from those big names, those big places where you were, and how that transitioned into, I want to work for a nonprofit whose reputation is built on truth and integrity and all of those things. It makes me wonder, were you seeing either in your roles or at least in the industry that you were in, that some of those areas lacked those things and you wanted to be in a place where you're going to make those types of, or try to help either them work with more integrity or to even identify potential clients? These are the ones that have integrity. Tell me about that.
Well, exactly. And now, this wasn't the first nonprofit I've ever worked for.
Okay.
Now, it was the first intentionally nonprofit
Uh,
I ever worked for. There were a couple that, anyway,
the ones that didn't make profit, but
yeah,
they had tried to.
I
Got
see
it.
what you did. I
yeah.
see what you did there. Yeah.
But you know, thinking back and going back over time, some of these things hadn't really crossed my mind in a long time. But,
Sure.
I remember how difficult it was working for a corporation, and a couple of them household name, a couple
Hmm.
of them huge, gigantic. They had these lofty, altruistic mission statements until you get up close. And in the very bottom, there's a little
Fine print.
fine print that says, unless we're not going to make our numbers for the quarter, and then stick it to them.
Yeah.
Right.
All that stuff goes out the door.
And there was actually one corporation that I worked very hard to get in with, got in there, started working, realized I couldn't to myself justify what we were doing.
Yeah.
Come on, guys, I'm not stupid. You can't even explain to me why this billing makes sense.
Right.
And you want me to go to these people and tell them that they owe this, their house may have been put up as collateral, whatever. Now you've got to pay me, and they're just crying, and I'm trying to explain it. And it's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah. And I left that company,
Yeah.
and they were highly, highly reputed. They made a lot of people a lot of money. They did wonderful things, but it was tearing me up inside. I
Yeah.
could not do it. And I left there despite the fact we had a house up for sale. I had, my daughter was little. It was a huge leap of faith
Sure.
to step off. And I found and ended up working for other organizations that brought me back up to the top. But it wasn't, again, until I moved to Tennessee, worked for a great company,
Right.
Hartman Luggage and Leather Goods. They're real big into high-end, marvelously high-end luggage and leather accessories. And then I don't know if you remember 9/11 happened,
Yeah. I kind of remember that.
and travel wasn't such a great thing to be in anymore.
Right.
Right.
And plus, they were already struggling competing against offshore manufacturers.
Sure.
And it was a good time for me to, okay, let me take a look. And the CEO of the Better Business Bureau, which is my last position, approached me and said, we kind of know you. Your wife has worked for us for a while. You're one of the few couples I think can actually work together. Normally we wouldn't do this,
Sure.
Right.
but we think we can do that. And there were some caveats. They
Sure.
said you got to be real careful not to be seen as a couple, as two separate
Right.
employees, which meant I didn't get to sit with my wife at any banquets or events and that kind of thing. But, you know, all in all, I think we've done pretty well. We're coming up on our 44th year
Oh, that's awesome.
anniversary here in June.
Congratulations.
So it was an opportunity that I wasn't sure I was really interested in,
Yeah.
but it was set up to be the right thing at the right time. And after a year or two, the CEO said, "So what do you think?" I said, "I think I've kind of worked for this organization all along. You just finally adopted me into and again, that's where I met Jim Bob, probably, and the fact you invited me along to this to participate in this, you knew I was enjoying what I was doing
Yes.
and enjoyed helping people, enjoyed helping businesses, and hopefully I moved the dial forward a little bit for the community in general.
Right. Right.
Well, that's very reminiscent to me. So I was very lucky to have been born into a family, a very entrepreneurial family, into a family business that's been around, that was around since 1936. My grandfather, we called him Poppy. And Poppy had a lot of sayings, so we call them Poppyisms. And one of his many, many Poppyisms that were always truthful. He was a no holds barred, slap you in the face with reality kind of guy, born and raised in New York, immigrated to Texas and everything. So, but one of his Poppyisms was, "I'd rather sleep well than eat well."
Mm.
And so that's one of the many ethoses, one of the many
What's the
schools of
plural of
thought that
ethos? Yeah.
I was raised with when it came to business. I went into my family's business after college. I really kind of did some stuff during the summers when I was growing up too, but that was the state of mind that I was raised with. And that sounds very much like what you're talking about. I mean, you can only do what you feel is right in whatever position. And I have left positions because I was working for people who were less than ethical or reputable. And they were asking me to do some things that were unpalatable to me. And so I get it, what you're saying, Jim. So I guess if I had to phrase this in a question, is there are hopefully lots and lots of people who are listening to this or watching this on YouTube. And if you are a business owner or a manager or even an employee at some point, what would you tell them if their gut is screaming to them about something here doesn't really add up? How would you advise them?
I'm personally at a loss at how anybody could be truly successful if they're not, if their gut is screaming at them, if their heart is hurting. If, like I was, you get in the car to drive to work and you don't want to go, and all the way there, you can feel your gut clenching because this isn't right. This isn't a fit. Could I have made more money in my career? Could I have been, had loftier positions? Probably.
Yeah.
But would I be happier than I am today? I can't even imagine that would happen.
Right.
Now, I was just on Tuesday, I'm part of a group that I went to, and there was a speaker, and this guy was talking about how he started his business almost by accident out of necessity, a small construction business. Now he's, one of the primary contractor on the new Titans Stadium here in Nashville.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously he's immensely successful. And he was talking about a couple of the issues he had to deal with starting out. And there were times he took financial hits because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
And a couple that he didn't think they could come back from, but he had to do it. And because of his faith and his internal ethics, his reputation, the company not only came back, but was by far stronger as a result of it.
Yeah.
The little short-term gain is great, but it's the long game. It's, where you're going to be. My phone rang this morning from somebody who wanted to hire me to do a project. I haven't talked to this guy in years, but he knew me. He heard what I'm doing now. I started a little part-time business, totally diametrically on the other end of the scale, not working in an office, not having to wear a jacket and tie every day. I wear, work shirts, and I do lightweight handyman things to help people.
Right.
Which is how I started out, just helping people. And some insisted on paying me because they felt they were taking advantage. Okay, pay me. And I got referral after referral after referral. I'm pretty proud of the fact that, when I get a phone call from someone, sometimes people I haven't met, that say, "Oh, I know about you. Here's the code to the garage. I'm not going to be there, but go on in. Here's the Wi-Fi password. The desk is in a box on the floor and the chair. If you want to put that together, grab a water, drink out of the fridge if you want water or whatever.
Right.
Make yourself at home, blast your tunes. Nobody's going to hear you. Have fun. And when you're done,
Make a sandwich, sit on the couch, take a nap.
and I'm almost like, we haven't met.
But your reputation was so far ahead of you, right?
Well, that's it. And, wow, really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of that. And the fact that Jim Bob recommended me to do this.
Well, and I think it speaks volumes, honestly, because I mean, if we were to talk to some of our listeners who are maybe struggling in areas that maybe they're not the owner of the company, but they're in leadership, or they're an employee, and maybe the company's doing good things, and maybe you're being paid well, but there's some things that are niggling. I think it's really easy for us to get boiled as frogs, right? And I don't know if that analogy is really true or not. Like it'll just sit there until it gets boiled, but I think it'll jump out at some point. But anyway, that notwithstanding, it is very easy for us as humans. I think we'll stay in longer when we're like, well, yeah, but it's paying the bills, and I've got orthodontia to pay for, and I've got kids camp and things to do, and I've got the car payments and the house payments and all that sort of stuff. And so we'll kind of put some things under the rug saying, I don't really like the way that's going. I'm not sure that I want to make an ethical call that's unethical. I just don't think it's the best. And then we kind of let that go. And then another thing comes up and we do the same thing. And then we get to a point where like, you know what, there are some ethical things that really need to be addressed, or I need to leave, one of the two. And I think it speaks volumes when you talk about organizations that make big decisions that are going to financially impact them, impact the company, but it's the right thing to do. And because you have two successful outcomes that come out of that. One is, you come back and you're able to strengthen that organization, do better than it's ever done before. That's one great outcome. The other great outcome is that company no longer exists doing those unethical things, which is also a good thing. And maybe it's going to hurt you personally, financially for a bit, but both will, right? But either way, like, I'd rather sleep well than eat well, right? And I think that does speak volumes. And the fact that you have that reputation across the organizations you've worked for, that those reputations led you to the Better Business Bureau, that leads you to like, hey, I want to do this thing to help people, and they're making me take their money, which, oh darn.
Yeah,
but
well.
but at the same time, like, hey, so and so referred me to you. I know we've never met, but I trust them. I trust what they've said about you. Here's the key to the garage, blah blah blah, and all that sort of stuff. That's huge. That's a much bigger win, I think, than even necessarily the company coming back and and doing multiple fold better than it had been before. The better option, the better outcome is that here you are, known as a man of integrity, that somebody can say, yeah, come into my house, do the things, and leave, and I completely trust you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And hey, I'm not downgrading money. Everybody needs to have money.
Of course, yeah.
To have income. But what I'm doing now, the fact that I'm being of service, that people trust me, refer me to their mothers and their grandmothers, and great. That to me is as rewarding as when they Venmo me the payment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably more. So.
Probably more.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but it's enjoyable. It's people don't know what to do. They're stuck. This debt. It started during COVID. Frankly, I mean, everybody suddenly was working from home.
Right.
And I need to get this desk. Yeah. And you order one, and they deliver it in this pack that's about that high and weighs, 212 pounds or something.
Right.
And okay, but I'm busy making a living. I don't know what to do. I've got one screwdriver. Let me stop for a second because I love this story. Very, very good friend of mine. This guy is sterling reputation. He's got a not-for-profit kids basketball league. That's what he left the mortgage world 20 plus years ago and is doing that. Great guy. Everybody loves him. Pain in the butt to go to dinner with because little kids come up and want to hug him constantly because of what he's done.
Right.
But he showed up but he cannot use a tool.
Yeah.
And he showed up at a cabin we live by the lake, and we had a cabin, a weekend place. I'm sitting there in the lounge chair, half asleep after a day of boating, and he shows up and says, Jim, I need your help. I'm trying to do, I forgot what, and all I have is this screwdriver, and it was a straight slot screwdriver. And he says, this has one of those crossy things. He made this gesture. I said, Andy, buddy, I have a bucket full of those crossy things. but I'm not going to let you touch them. Let me go and do that. But
It's
anyway, sorry, I have
like
to,
handing a
I have
primate
all,
a loaded pistol or something.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And the day that I was doing some electrical work and he had to run, I sent him off to buy something and came back and said, Jim, I messed up. What'd you do? He said, well, I got that electrical ballast for that fluorescent light, you said, and I tried to put it in and I knew where this was going. And he said, I started to hook it up and I electrocuted myself and now the lights in the kitchen don't work. I, I said, well, you're talking to me, so the electrocution wasn't
Yeah, that's good.
That,
Glad
fatal,
you're still
but
talking. That's good.
but anyway, but there's stories, there's people believing in you, there's people
Yeah,
helping you. Think about your community where you are in some of the businesses that just have great reputation. It's like, man, I can't believe this guy started in his garage or
right.
right.
did this, what a salt of the earth, great guy and whatever running this thing,
Hmm.
or it's huge. And why is that? Well, because people trust them, people honor what they're doing. Maybe they are strictly business to business, but those businesses trust them to supply
Right.
or do their outsourced IT or do their supply their products or market their products or whatever the case is, where there's some of these people that are, and here in the Nashville area, where Jim Bob and I are very familiar with one that had the name on the local arena downtown that just, boom, they were very well known, made buckets and buckets and buckets of money until they found out they were completely cheating their customers.
Mm,
CEO, who I knew, I talked to a number of times, went to jail. I may still be there, I don't know.
right.
But well, what did that accomplish?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you not only did you lose everything in the end, but your reputation, well, this is awful. I just don't understand some people, and I know sometimes it's accidental.
Sure.
People, white collar crime or whatever, they don't mean to get in as deep as they are. They borrow a little money to make ends meet, and the next thing you know, they've embezzled $10,000 from their little league team.
Mm,
Right.
I kind of understand that. I don't, but
I,
got sucked in.
I tell you, so to that point, i- listen, all three of us have been around the block a few times. We've
mhm.
known people who've done it right,
Yeah.
But we've also known probably more than our fair share who have chosen to do what was easy versus what was right. And I think that there's a commonality in what happens with those people who choose to do something improper for the quick buck now. And the problem is, you could see this happening and write the rest of the story for them, like the CEO that you're talking about. If you step back and you watch this and you see them following a path, if it was visible to anybody, you could say, time out. You know where this is going to lead, don't you? Why do you think people make the choice to grab the quick buck doing things the wrong way when at a logical level, unless they're completely sociopathic, they know what they should and shouldn't do? What do you think drives people to do something like that, which will ultimately not only tarnish their reputation, but ruin it?
I, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to understand any more than I can. What possesses somebody to step off on the top of a ski jump at the Olympics? Like I climbed one in Lake Placid one time, and I went up on the elevator, and that was life changing. I would
And went
never do
down on the
that again.
elevator.
Yeah, I went down. Oh, I wouldn't. It was during the summer. I didn't want anything to do with it. But some things they're so far from where your mindset is.
Yeah.
But I one of my Forrest Gump moments. I fiddle around looking at colleges or whatever, and somehow I ended up at Cornell University, but I met people that were obsessed. And when I say obsessed, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, hyperbole here, obsessed with being successful and making money.
Right.
In fact, we were told during our orientation, be careful who you ask for help here. Why?
Why?
Well, because everything is marked on a curve. A lot of people will give you deliberately
Sandbagging.
mislead you or give you some bad information, so you bring the curve down.
Wow.
That happened during a big test.
That's a tough culture.
Partway through, somebody messed with the dials on a mass spectrometer or some machine that we needed to get a result.
Wow.
So they figured it out because number 1 through 120 got within the spectrum of what they were expecting. And then everybody after 120 didn't get it.
Wow.
So they knew something had happened and found the error. But yeah, anyway, but you've got that mindset. Got to win, got to, it doesn't matter who I step on, claw over, whatever.
Right. So for me to succeed, you have to fail.
Yeah.
But it's important. There was a friend of a friend that, and it's a long, long time ago, so the story doesn't make sense, but his family had a very, very well-known business. And I kind of knew something was up when his parents bought him a new BMW. I was driving an 8-year-old rust bucket, but his parents bought him a new BMW because they didn't want him to bring his good car to drive around in the snow and the salt. So, I mean, he had unlimited funds, we all knew each other from tennis camp in Monaco, that kind of thing. And yet his uncle, who was in the news at the time, but actually did a hostile takeover of the family business and threw this family out on their ear, his sister and their family. And I don't know, maybe being 70, turning 70 and knowing how, seeing how many of my friends and classmates aren't around anymore or are debilitated or are estranged from their families or on their 5th or 6th marriage.
Right.
Those things don't fit on the scale together.
Yeah.
Gee, this guy that threw his family out of that business is dead. He's passed. He's long gone.
Yeah.
And so here's 3 guys on a podcast talking about his negative, the negative results and his flawed personality to do what he did, instead of saying, wow. Now,
Look at all the good he did.
I could fill the rest of this podcast with stories about my father, which I had a very good influence. When he passed away, I mean, I knew, in our town, he had a good reputation, but I didn't understand.
Right.
And to have people come up afterwards and, oh, your father, when my dad was sick and in the hospital, he was the only one who came. Or when he couldn't drive, he drove in and got him food for his apartment.
Right.
Or, some of these things, that's what people are remembering.
Yeah.
Rather than, wow, he made millions and millions and millions of dollars. What a
died
jerk
alone.
that guy was.
Exactly.
I had a similar experience. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim Bob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you're right when you bring up environments where it's set to be, cutthroat and dog eat dog. And if you ask me for help, I may give you the wrong answer in order to make myself better. Those types of environments definitely exist, right? And, here we are all from different environments and different situations growing up and have a different mindset than that. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. And if I find myself in it, I'm not going to participate in that type of thing. I also, maybe while I'm in that, I may use some discretion and not maybe help people so much because I don't want it to come across as, or I also don't want it to affect my reputation that you gave me this bad advice. I'm like, well, no, I gave you good advice. You didn't take it, or whatever the situation was, right?
Right.
But it is easy to find yourself in an environment where that type of behavior is expected. is rewarded, is championed. And I would just say, anybody listening, if you find yourself in one of those, get out. But find a way out, because that's not good for you. It's not good to be in that type of situation. And there are other environments where you can help people. You can be a positive influence on people. You can do things with integrity, and you can financially benefit from it. But that's not the main goal, right? The main goal is that, and I just say it this way too, like, we're all put here for a purpose, right? And that purpose is to be a blessing to all of those that we come into contact with. That's the main purpose that we're here for. We wouldn't be here if what we knew and what we bring and the talents that we have and the gifts that we have weren't intended to be helpful to somebody else. If it's all for me and all the benefits and blessings flow up to me, then really what's the point of that? How is that anything worth being a part of, and or saying that this is really the goal of my life, is for everything to come to me? I've been given so many riches, and it's easy for us to look at things and say, I wish I had what that guy had, or I wish I had what this other person had, or I wish I could have accomplished what that person accomplished. The point is, though, that's not what we're here for. We're here with the gifts and the talents that we have, and we are put into the lives of the people that we're put into in order to be a positive influence for them, to be a blessing to them, to bring them food when they can't get someplace, to visit them when they're sick, to help them along in their business, to put together desks, to help others see that, hey, here's an organization that actually acts with integrity and is actually going to have your best interest at heart. You're going to pay them, of course. And yes, they do need to make a profit, but they're going to do it in such a way that's beneficial to you both, right? That's the goal. Yes, every organization needs to make money, but they also need to provide a service that is worth more than the money that they make or the money that they collect from somebody, so that they're actually being a blessing to somebody. And I just want to applaud you, Jim, for having that type of integrity and moving from the organizations that you have, and even being able to recognize and chronicle the stories of someone whose life has impacted others in a positive way, while also pointing out, then here's some other things that maybe you would have considered this person to be successful, but the impact that they have was so negative to the people around them that all of their success was for them and them alone, which is really not a good role model to follow.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Richard?
And what I was going to say was similar to what you were talking about, Jim. Was when I was leaving college, I never wanted to join my family's business, which
Right.
was wholesale floor covering distribution. Because for whatever reason, I just had this idea in my head that I was going to be doing something, just selling something. I knew I was going to be in sales, but probably something sexier or more exciting, or I don't know what.
Right.
But so I'm
Sexier
in my
than
senior
floors? I don't know. That's
year. I know what is exciting about floor covering. Well,
People walk all over you.
yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm a dad. I'm a granddad.
I know it's a shameless dad joke, but so I joined my father and a sales manager at the time at a trade show in Vegas, because they needed an extra body to sit in their booth while they went out across the show floor and made connections with other companies. And
You were a booth babe. I get it.
So I was basically just a placeholder.
Yeah.
But my name being the same as the name of the ownership of the company. And they would bring people that they wanted to meet with back to the booth to have these conversations. And as they're bringing these people back, person after person after person would meet me and say, you know what, let me just tell you something. And this is something where I wish this podcast could do the physical, recreation of it, where they're shaking your hand, but they're pulling you close and kind of trying to tell you something, almost a hug, and telling you, let me tell you something about your dad.
Yeah.
Something that your dad taught me 30 years ago,
Right.
that I never forgot. Or let me tell you something, I learned this and this from your grandfather. I'm saying this like I'm still shaking
exactly.
his hand. But your grandfather gave me my first job in this industry, and he taught me X, Y, and Z, and I never forgot it. And let me tell you something, I am now the president of this large corporation now, or whatever. And all of a sudden I had like I'm dating myself, but a V8 head smack moment, holy cow moment. I'm not going to use the word that I'm thinking.
Right.
That's like, I never realized the wealth of really great knowledge that I have at my fingertips from my own family and
Right.
from other people in my family's business. I would be crazy not to learn from this. Ultimately, yes, we're selling floor covering and floor covering materials to flooring retailers around Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas, but it's not the what that we're selling,
Yeah.
it's the how
Yeah.
and the why.
And the why.
And ultimately, doing business the right way doesn't matter the product as long as the process is right. And
Well,
that's what I learned from that. And I'm like, I would be crazy not to join a company that has that kind of a way of doing business. I just took it for granted growing up. And then you see people do things like we were talking about for the quick, easy buck that usually winds up coming back and biting them in the backside later on. I started with a company after I left my family's, and they were a very large flooring distributorship, largest in the country at the time. And they were making money hand over fist, but the way that they were run was very cold and always looking for, increasing the bottom line, but not necessarily about what was right. People didn't love them the way that they loved my family's business.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just remembering this fondly, selectively, but I really think that was the case. And I think really speaks to what we're talking about as far as reputation and how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
Well, I know the three of us, I think everybody who's listening, if they're honest, knows of times that they found something cheaper available, but went with someone that was a little more expensive, sometimes a lot more expensive, simply because they were more comfortable with them. They had a better reputation. They knew this company had integrity, that if there was an issue, they'd take care of it, or they'd take the extra time to install it properly, or whatever the case is. I mean, it's not strictly your integrity, your reputation that benefits. I mean, often there's a financial benefit as well.
Right.
I mean, there was a car dealer, my father would go out of his way to do business with.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it was the same product, I'm sure he could have gotten a better deal. There were people advertising all the time. He's like, no, I know these people. I trust these people. They took care of me when I, had a problem. They took care of your grandfather when he had a problem.
That's who has our business.
Yeah.
That's why they're still there today.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to talk about, you can be, Nice Business Podcast is really kind of a double entendre. It's, yes, you can have a nice business as well as being nice in business. And that's really what this is all about.
Yeah. Agreed.
So Jim, I'll tell you, I think we could be talking about old stories for the rest of the day. But I think that for our listeners and people who are viewing this, we'll let them off the hook a little bit.
Sounds good.
I do want to share one last thing.
Sure.
And I may have shared it with you very quickly. And it's on topic, it's a little off topic, but I remember my father, when I was a kid, a little guy, so it was that long ago, turned our farm into a golf course and built this golf course during his off hours and his, at night after he did his regular job, he'd come home and had built this with his own hands. Here I am, I flash forward, probably college. I remember the event, maybe not the time, but I was out working there summers, which was always a blast because I got to work with my teachers in high school when I went to work summer. But, I'm out there mowing and came in for a Coke, took a break, and a guy came stomping in and berating. I can't use any of the language that he was using, but it was a blankety blank cow pasture. And my father, should learn how to run a place if he's going to own it. And that fairway looks like crap and blah, blah, blah. And my father kind of shook it out. Sorry, let me see what we can do about that. Let me cool off over here, have a beer, whatever. And my father, I was really upset.
Yeah.
And my father was just shaking his head. And he says, can you imagine the life that man has?
Yeah.
That this is what he's complaining about.
It was a thunderbolt. It was one of those epiphanies that changes your life. It's like,
Right.
oh, I feel bad for him now
Right.
because this person is such a jerk, is such a person. But my father, and nothing ever really upset him, or at least visibly. But, he was able to humanize this person, feel bad for him, understand. Really doesn't matter what this guy thinks, but I feel bad that, he should be out there having a good time. And if
Right.
he's that upset over it. And, I like to share that. I've had people come up to me after I've mentioned this during talks or whatever and say, wow, I'm dealing with a situation. Thank you for helping me by sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do like to share that probably ad nauseum with the people that I know, but I think it's such an important message to help you understand how just how fundamental it is to remember that person. They might be a jerk at the moment, whatever, but something else is behind this. It isn't just how they feel at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah.
story.
Well, thanks for that insight. And that's absolutely true. I couldn't agree more. It's important to see what's going on with the other person. Why are they saying what they're saying as opposed to what are they saying reacting to the what?
Right.
So thank
Well,
you
it's
very
gotten
much.
me through some hard times too.
Yeah,
I'll bet.
sure.
I'll
I bet
bet.
it did. I bet it did. Thank you very much for joining us and having this conversation. I really hope that people listening to this and watching it get something out, get some perspective out of it. And I've really enjoyed having you on. So
Same.
thank you.
Well, I very much enjoyed being here and looking back after hitting 70. It's always a good time for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Good.
happy belated birthday.
Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Nice Business Podcast. We hope you got some valuable information and inspiration. We're always looking for great stories that will help your business be more kind and successful. And if you know of one we should hear or someone that would be a great interview, please let us know. To contact me, click the link here to go to my website or use this QR code. I wish you a nice business.